Hello, everyone, and welcome into Boilermaker Lounge here on the Tuesday edition. I am Sam Springer, as always, joined by Grant Flora. Grant, how are we this fine Tuesday?
Doing pretty good, I know we talk about this every time we start an episode these past few weeks, but it finally got warmer.
Yes.
My goodness, today I was going out for a run and I was roasting. I was like, finally got some warmth out here. So
About
beautiful
time,
day.
right?
Yeah.
Well, today we are joined by our buddy from Sports Illustrated, Dustin Schutte. Dustin, the weather okay there in St. Louis?
Yeah, it's also warm, but I think it was Friday, Saturday, it was like cool enough, so we took our TV outside and had a fire. And
Oh yeah,
you don't get many fire nights in the summer, so
yeah.
It was like mid-60s, so we took full advantage of the 2 days and spent a lot of it outside.
We had a game for one of our our youngest, and it was like 58 degrees, which wasn't bad when it was sunny, but the wind was blowing the clouds in front, and it'd get frigid when it happened. So, but I agree. I love the summertime. I guess I sweat a lot, but let's get into topics instead of talking about our perspiration issue. Dustin, we've kind of went over and evaluated the different classes of the players that coming back and that consist of this next season's roster. You just wrote an article about one of college basketball's good analysts. I like Rob Doster a lot, and you talked about what he had said is he's finally moved Purdue to the number one, like the winner of the off season, essentially.
Yeah, basically. So I was watching their podcast or their show, whatever, however you want to label it. I was watching that today, just because the title was "Winners and Losers of the Offseason," and I thought, well, they're probably going to have Purdue in the winners category, right? And it was interesting because Jeff Goodman spoke first, I think he gave his first, and Purdue was not on the list. He actually had Iowa number one, which I can totally understand.
He went by the players where they were ranked, right?
What's that?
As their portal ranking, was he basically basing Iowa as the winner because of their portal ranking players that they got?
Yeah, I think that, and the fact that he's a big fan of Ben McCollum. And so I think there was a lot of factors in there. So I kind of understood that. But he didn't have Purdue on the list at all, and I thought that was interesting. And then you switch over to Rob Doster, who had Purdue at number one after Goodman didn't have any, and basically saying, like, in this day and age, like, retention is a big deal. And so the fact that you are bringing back Braden Smith, there might have been some rumors out there, how valid they were, how true they were. Nobody, probably only Braden Smith and any other schools, maybe Matt Painter, probably know if that's true or not. And then Trey Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Lawyer. To me, the biggest surprise was that none of those guys even tested the NBA draft waters, as opposed to transferring. And then you get Daniel Jacobson back. Then you get Jakari Harrison, CJ Cox back. And then you get Oscar Clough, who is going to hopefully help your rebounding issues. You get Liam Murphy, who basically, to me, is going to slide in and play that same role that Cam Heide played the past couple seasons. And then you get Omer Meyer out of out of Israel. And to me, he made a lot of valid points. Like, they addressed the issues that they had this past season through the transfer portal and through recruiting. They returned their three top scorers, their three senior leaders. I mean, how else do you win an offseason? Like, that's why they're the preseason number one. That's why they're a team that's a favorite to win the national championship, get to the Final Four. It all added up, and it made sense to me. And I can understand why people wouldn't, like, if you didn't seriously think those three guys were going anywhere, I can see why maybe you wouldn't have them in the top 10 in today's transfer portal, because there are teams that are overhauling every single year, and Purdue doesn't have to do that. So I understood both sides of that argument, but I tended to side with Doster. I think they needed – I don't know that they had to be number one, but I think they belonged in the top 10.
Well, and honestly, I kind of think that, the reasoning behind it is winning the portal to me is different than winning the offseason. Purdue had the pieces that they needed in place already, and retaining them, like you said, and keeping them and coming back. That was the huge win. And then to get the 2 players that they did add from the portal just made them that much better. I mean, essentially is what I'm getting.
Well, I think too, you got to remember. So one thing I'm going to point to 2 different teams here. Number one, the easy one, and the one that everybody listening to this is going to enjoy, is everybody would have said last season that Indiana won the transfer portal. Yep. And what that resulted in. Yeah, they beat Purdue at home. They had some big wins, but they didn't get to the NCAA tournament, and it resulted in their coach getting fired. Now, maybe to them that was a good thing. I don't know. But they had what they were talked about all offseason was you got to have that premier player, which they thought they had in Umar Ballo, and got to have excellent guard play. And they had Anthony Leal and Trey Galloway returning. They brought Kanan Carlisle and Miles Rice, and that was supposed to be their saving grace. This is why they were going to be a top 4 Big Ten team and get to the NCAA tournament and maybe make a push to the Sweet 16. Didn't happen. The other one is, to me, like if you look at portal winners over the past couple of years, you would probably look at Kansas's roster and say that they were a big winner. Yeah. Hunter Dickinson, good player. AJ Storr, good player. They just didn't fit. And so that's why I think, like, even if you quote unquote win the transfer portal, you still have to make sure you're getting the pieces that fit into your system. And to me, that's why what Matt Painter does is so impressive, because those guys, like Lance Jones, came in and immediately, like, he just fit. Like, he gave, to me, more than his production on the court, he gave that team personality. I think those other guys were just so serious and always talking about basketball that you have to have sometimes that goofball type of guy. That guy keeps it light. So I think he was that kind of piece. I don't know anything about Oscar Clough or Liam Murphy. I would be surprised if one of those 2 guys doesn't have some sort of personality to kind of keep things light and jovial at times. But again, the biggest factor is they couldn't rebound last season, and now they've addressed that with Oscar Clough. And Matt Painter loves to have a stretch 4 with. He had it with Mason Gillis. He had it with Cam Heide. Now he's going to have it with Liam Murphy. I don't expect he's going to play a ton, but my thought about Liam Murphy is he's a guy that's probably going to play 10 minutes a game, but he's also a guy that if he gets hot, he could play 25 minutes and score 30 points. Like, he's just that good of a shooter, and Purdue has that many weapons that if he starts knocking them down, watch out Mackey record, like 3-point record. He could come from Mason Gillis's record. He's that good of a shooter.
Well, and that's, I think, what makes them even more dangerous is because those pieces can get hot. You don't know when you don't know when Liam Murphy, who's a 40% 3-point shooter, is going to heat up and hit a heater, like you said, or Clough can't be stopped in the paint. It's just they're going to take over,
and that whole thing kind of meshes well with my point. The idea of like Purdue being one of the top offseason teams, because if I'm a coach or someone putting together a roster, I would rather retain a good player that I already have that fits in my system than to go out and find a new player. And so you look at a team like Purdue, those retention pieces to me are more valuable than a major transfer portal piece, even if you're adding like an RJ Lewis or one of those top transfer guys. So to be able to keep those big stars and then supplement with the portal, to me, that would be higher in my hierarchy than picking up the best transfer portal class. So that's why I also would side with Doster, just because I think not having to teach a new system, finding a guy that already fits with your chemistry, especially for you as a coach, is just much more valuable than bringing in a high caliber transfer.
Well, and to that point, I think Jeff Goodman can say, this is not a shot at Jeff Goodman. I like Jeff Goodman. I know he gets a lot of stuff on social media, but I like that guy. I've talked to him a few times, not a lot, but the thing to me is, you know what? I just lost my train of thought. I was defending Jeff Goodman and I completely lost my train of thought.
It happens to everybody, I promise. It just comes with age, Dustin.
Yeah, that's what happens. Man, I was going to make such a good point, and now it's my mind. But I think this isn't the point I was going to make, but I can make this point, is that to Grant's point, I think that Matt Painter's always kind of, even before the transfer portal was a thing, he would add graduate transfers, and usually that was some sort of guard. Johnny Hill, John Octius, a couple of those other guys, David Jenkins, but I think he came in the portal era.
I think it was right at the beginning of,
Yeah, I think so too. But he finds guys that kind of fit into there. He's not going to just try to fit square peg into a round hole. He's going to make sure the guys fit. And that's what I don't know that they go after a ton of guys. Like you'll see some guys that it's like, for instance, Michigan, they may throw out, 30 offers to guys or be talking to 30 different guys. It felt like Purdue talked to like 5 guys. And it's like, if Liam Murphy doesn't come, we're going to
find who they were.
I know. I can remember writing stories about 5 guys. Now ask me who those 5 were. And I don't remember it all, but I know there was one guy out of North Carolina. There's another transfer player. But
Kennard
okay,
Davis was one we talked about a lot.
Yes, yeah, that was another one. So the point I was going to make here about Jeff Goodman was, so the fact that he said Braden Smith wasn't going anywhere. Okay, but I don't think a few years ago people would have thought Hunter Dickinson was going anywhere. I don't think PJ Haggerty was going to go anywhere. So to Grant's point, I think you do have to put some value in the fact that you're able to retain those players, especially when they're such – they did lose some guys. Cam Heidi's a good player. Miles Colvin's a good player. But the fact that you're able to retain your top players from last year, I think it's somewhere like 80% of their production from last season. Maybe it's probably even higher than that. That has to be a factor, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and they lost part of their team. They didn't completely avoid the transfer bug, but the ones that did weren't backbreaking. They just weren't backbreaking to the point where, okay, well, that really hurts. Did other players, the top 3, get offered bigger deals? Potentially, probably. I don't know. Like you said, we will never really know, except for them, and they still wanted to come back to Purdue. That is amazing to me.
And I was going to say, sometimes you have to know when to let players go. And
true.
I think in some ways, like especially like the Wilberg and Brian Waddell transfers, like obviously you never want to just have somebody leave and then force somebody to leave. But I think losing those guys and allowing you to potentially be able to bring in some more players that can fit better into what you're trying to do is a positive for the team. Yep. And so understanding that we can let those guys go and try to work around and create a better roster is also really important. And Matt Painter did a great job with that too. And think about one of the things that I think people are like, well, they just want more playing time, or it's about me and not about team. It's like, did you watch how Wilberg played in the NCAA tournament? Especially that first game against High Point. Like if he's going to Wichita State, play in the mid majors and get 10 points and 6 rebounds a game. Same thing with Brian Waddell. Like he would play really well, but he was usually coming in the last 5 minutes against a mid-major, a low major at home. Like those guys. Now, I think the only one that surprised me, I think Miles Colvin, it seemed like he was, I don't want to say unhappy because I don't know his personality, but he seemed like the most likely to transfer. The one that did kind of surprise me, and I do think Matt Painter's kind of hinted at this, I think Camden Heidi kind of caught everybody off guard. The interesting thing, and I don't know that this is really a topic of conversation here, but when Braden Smith accepted his award for the Bob Cousy and was a finalist for the Naismith, he went out to Los Angeles. He took 2 guys with him, Fletcher Lawyer and Camden Heidi. So they had a good relationship. So I think that one was a little surprising, but in this day and age, who knows what's going to happen. So I don't think a lot of people talked to about Miles Colvin and Camden Heidi losing those guys. Certainly they were athletic. And I think they were great in terms of athleticism with their defense and giving us some highlight reel dunks. But the thing that you wanted those 2 guys to do and provide you was probably somebody who could give you a pump fake and beat guys off the dribble or just drive around guys. They couldn't really use their athleticism to put the ball on the deck and get to the basket. So I'm not sure that when people say, what about their lack of athleticism? I don't know that it really hurts because I don't know that it was used in that system the way it needed to be for Purdue to be effective. So I think it's basically a wash at that point.
Yeah, and with these guys leaving, we hated to see them go, but honestly, we have a better roster now. I think it's more well-rounded. It's not taking away what those guys brought,
right?
But we filled some gaps with those 2 positions, Heidi and Colvin, put Clough and Murphy in there. We now have a more well-rounded roster by having those two wings basically go, and we got one to replace it and a big guy to go in the middle with Jacobson.
Yeah, and the thing that's scary to think about if you are an opponent next season is Oscar Clough averaged basically 18 and 12 at South Dakota State, and he was logging about, I think I wrote the story today, 28 minutes. It'll be a shameless plug. It'll be out tomorrow. The Welcome Aboard series continues. Welcome back, welcome aboard with Oscar Clough tomorrow. But basically 28 minutes. I think he's probably going to be closer to 18 to 20 minutes and splitting that with Daniel Jacobson. Like, think of how much more efficient he's going to be. Think of how much healthier that body's going to be at the end of the season. And so he may not be a double-double guy, but if he is a 10 and 8 guy, they didn't have anybody that got 8 rebounds last year.
Right.
Like, and then you got Daniel Jacobson to clean it up on the defensive end. The one thing I'm interested in is, like, what is Oscar Clough's defensive? Is he going to be a guy that if Jakari Harris, CJ Cox, Fletcher Lawyer get beat off the dribble, can he help? Can he provide some of that rim protection? Doesn't have to block shots, but can he keep guys from getting into the paint? I'm really curious because there's been a lot of talk about his offense and his rebounding, not so much about his defense. So is that still going to be an area of concern? And how much does that factor into his minutes? Like, what's Purdue going to value more? And maybe it's a matchup thing. It could be game by game. There could be games where we see Oscar Clough on the floor for 30 minutes. Could be games where we see Daniel Jacobson on the floor 30 minutes. I don't know. That, to me, is going to be a really interesting battle throughout the course of the season. I think that position is probably going to be more matchup-based than anything else we see on the floor this coming season.
I honestly think with the addition of Clough and bringing back Jacobson, that's going to actually, to me, TKR's rebound numbers are going to go up. And the only reason I say that is I was talking to Grant about this. He's playing at 5 last year. He was outsized against many people that he was going against. So therefore, maybe he wasn't getting the best position. Maybe he didn't have the length over those guys. Well, you get to guys that are a 4, like you are playing, he's got more length. He's got more, he can get his position a little bit better to where maybe he's in a better position to get more rebounds as a 4 than he ever was as a 5.
And to that point, I don't think it's going to be a drastic drop-off, but I think now, last year they didn't really have anybody that you could sub in and you felt like you were going to keep the other team at bay or increase your lead. Now you could say if Trey Kaufman-Renn needs to blow and Daniel Jacobson in the game, you can bring in either Liam Murphy if you want to stretch for, you can bring in Oscar Clough and play kind of a big man sort of ball. Because I think Oscar Clough is not like playing AJ Hammonds and Isaac Haas together. Like, those two guys were Hammonds had a little bit of mobility, could step out and knock down a jump shot, but they weren't fleet of foot. I think Oscar Clough is a little bit more athletic and has some versatility for his size. So I think you could switch that out and you could either have 2 bigs or you could have Jacobson and Murphy. So you could have a 3-man rotation where I don't remember what Kaufman-Renn's, I think he was around 32 minutes per game. Even if that drops down to 29 or 30. Like, at the end of games, you might be correct. He might get more rebounds just because he's fresher. And over the course of the season, he doesn't have to play 30. Like, 3 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but in 10 games, that's 30 minutes where you're saving your legs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be really interesting as far as Daniel Jacobson's concerned to figure out how well he can rebound himself. Because I feel like right now Oscar Clough's big thing is he's a great rebounder, and Daniel Jacobson more about the rim protection and the defense. If Daniel Jacobson is an effective rebounder at the 5, to me, he seems more likely to get some of those heavier minutes because now, the great thing that Clough can do isn't as different of what Jacobson can do as well. He can rebound too, and then he can also bring that rim protection and fill up that hole. I'll be really interested to see how Jacobson can rebound too, because obviously coming in, the whole talk has been he's a little bit slim. He maybe could get pushed around. Won't be the physical force that we're used to with a guy like Zach Edey. To me, that will make a big difference into how those two rotate and who gets how many minutes, and then could affect other guys rebounding as well, and whether or not you can play Jacobson and Murphy together. Like, if Jacobson can't rebound all that well, now you're going to be tough to compete with on the glass, or tough for Purdue to compete against other teams on the glass if Jacobson and Murphy are playing at the same time. So I think Jacobson's rebounding plays a pretty big factor into what this Purdue front court will look like.
I think he'll probably be more effective this year because he's put on 40 pounds. And the other thing too, yeah. And the other thing is that Matt Painter in another interview talked about we like him as the lob threat. Well, Purdue really didn't have that. I mean, they had it, and if Cam Heide or Miles Colvin was on a breakaway,
Right.
they kind of had it. Every once in a while, I think maybe Jakari Harris got one or two that season. But you have that now in your half-court offense. It's not just full court. Like, you could run some sort of lob play to Daniel Jacobson, and he can get some easy buckets there just because of his length. So I think you're right, Grant. I think that's going to be interesting. If he's able to rebound at a high level, and it doesn't have to be Zach Edey level, but if you can get to where you're getting 6 or 7 rebounds, or at least just getting in the way, like take up space and just prevent other guys from getting rebounds and leave those for Trey Kaufman-Ran or Braden Smith or Fletcher Lawyer, I think even that would be a huge benefit, because I ultimately think you're correct, where if you're going to look at a 40-minute split, I think Daniel Jacobson's probably getting 23 to 25 of those minutes, and you're looking at Oscar Clough 15 to 17. Now, again, it depends. If Purdue needs offense, I think they're going to go Clough. And if they need defense, I think it's going to be Jacobson. But for the majority of the season, I think I would agree with Grant that he'll probably be the one on the floor more, assuming he's not a liability on the glass.
Especially because Purdue has so many offensive rebounds outside of the 5 spot that a little less offense at the 5 isn't going to hurt you as badly as maybe it would have a few years ago.
Yeah, good point. Great point. But and here I am now, Dustin. I have lost my train of thought. I had something, and then I was like,
"This is what happens in the off season." I do have a question that people listening can't hear, but you were drinking out of a bottle. It looked like it said apple cider vinegar.
No, it's black cherry water.
Black cherry. Okay. I was like, "Is he drinking
black cherry water?"
I knew it was clear, so I'm like, that's not apple cider vinegar, but that's what the bottle looked like. And I was like, did you just save that bottle? Or
well, now that you say it, I'm like, yeah.
Some sort of health secret you're withholding?
Yeah, I'm down in vinegar. Yeah. But the one thing I was going to ask was about Smith. Is he going to be, in your mind, the preseason front runner, player of the year?
Yes, I think so. I think with all that he accomplished last season, the fact that he was a finalist this past year, I don't know if he's going to win it because a lot happens over the course of the season.
Sure.
And this, again, because Purdue has so many weapons, he may not have it's hard for me to say that. There's a chance that he's a better player, but the stats still don't match. And I mean, I think his assist numbers are going to increase because I think the shooting and the play around him has gotten so much better. But do they need him to average 16 points a game? I don't know that they do. I think they need him to be aggressive in certain spots, but they don't think they need that same aggressiveness that they needed last year. Right. So, to me, I still think he's going to be the National Player of the Year. I would my bold prediction will be that Braden Smith is going to average 10 assists per game next season. And that's not a huge jump, but it's an assist and a half per game.
Yeah.
I just think that they're surrounded with so much that kind of talent around him. And the other thing is Trey Kaufman-Ran had 2.5 assists per game or 2.2 assists per game. Oscar Clough averaged 2.8 assists per game. So even their big men can pass. Mm-hmm. So they're just surrounded by such better decision makers and shooters this season. And again, I say this not taking anything away from what the team they had last season. They just didn't have the combinations that they needed. So I do think Braden Smith is going to be the preseason player of the year. And I think he's going to be invited. Whether or not he wins, I don't know, but I think he's at least going to be a finalist again next season.
So does he get his triple-double next season? Finally, after all those games where he was so close, does he get the triple-double?
I think he's going to get it. Because and it's because of kind of what I talked about earlier, because there were times he was a better rebounder as a sophomore than he was as a junior. And that's just because, again, sometimes Edey would take up space and he wouldn't necessarily get the rebound. Obviously he gets a lot, 12.2 per game, but there were times he just take up space, just take out two guys, and Braden Smith swoops in, gets the ball off the rim. And I think, honestly, that's how Purdue wants to play. If you can get Oscar Clough or Daniel Jacobson to take up space, take out a guy, and Braden Smith can swoop in there, get you a rebound, and then get the offense going in the other direction. Yeah. And that's where he's at his best. And maybe Purdue doesn't have quite the same athleticism, again, that they had with Miles Colvin and Camden Heide. So you can't maybe throw those full court lobs anymore and try to get those alley-oops. But get the defense, catch the defense nap and catch him off balance. I think that's why Braden Smith will get a triple-double next season. And probably, I say his numbers aren't going to be better. And now I'm just going to give you reasons why his assists and his rebounding totals are going to be higher than they were this past year.
Well, and no, you don't have Heidi or Colvin, but you've got Fletcher Lawyer's leaked out and he's standing on the wing out there, or Murphy's there, or hey, there's Jakari Harris. Let's let him throw one down. There are still plenty of opportunities for those fast breaks to get going quickly and get them paid off. And who's the starting five in your mind? Does Jacobson start over Clough, or does Clough normally start? And does CJ Cox maintain his starting spot? Yeah,
that's tough. Brady and Trey are going to start. My head and heart tell me that Daniel Jacobson's going to start. And then I think they're going to use Oscar Clough's offense, when Jacobson needs a breather, or I think they're even going to use my guess is going to be Oscar Clough will play a little bit of the 4 with Daniel Jacobson. That's not anything based on what I've seen. I think that's a prediction. I think he's just a taller version of Trey Kaufman-Renn and can give you the same thing, just a better rebounder. So I think Jacobson's going to start. The interesting one is going to be CJ Cox. I think he probably is going to start, at least to start the season. But the one thing I would like to see out of Jakari Harris, because I think more than CJ Cox, Jakari Harris is the one that you can look at and say that's what he can add to his game. And that's what I talked about earlier too. Like, can somebody drive and get to the basket? Can I just say, you know what, one-on-one, I'm taking you and I'm going to get 2 points, or I'm going to get fouled, or I'm going to get an and one. Mm-hmm. I think that Jakari's size, I think he's strong. And I just think he showed times where he could do that. He was just hesitant. And I don't know if that was freshman butterflies or, playing against college level guys, 20, 21-year-olds instead of 18-year-olds. But I think if he adds that element to his game this offseason, he might be the starter, and you might bring in CJ Cox off the bench. But I think that's going to be an interesting battle. I think that those two are both going to start. I don't know who's going to get the majority of the starts, though.
And Grant and I have talked about that too, and we love CJ Cox, but we've just seen those spurts from Harris that he could take over a game for a little bit of time if he needed to. Like that, you could see that in him potentially down the road. And I think and Tom Izzo always says the biggest jump athletically in a player's career is from freshman to sophomore. And so if they both come through and improve, my good Lord, watch out, because that's going to be hard for Matt Painter. He's going to be up all night trying to figure out how to get the rotation right.
Yeah. Well, I think not to compare him to players, like I think CJ Cox is more of a Fletcher Lawyer type, where I think he can get to like his pull up. I think he can or spot up shot or come off a screen and knock down shots. I don't know that we did see it towards the end of the season. He did get more comfortable where he was driving to the basket and drawing contact. I think he's just more of a pure shooter though. And a little bit more of Carson Edwards, but Carson could of course drive to the basket. This is going to sound really weird because maybe I misremember this, but for whatever reason, Jakari Harris somewhat reminds me of E'Twaun Moore. Because I think like E'Twaun Moore he wasn't super quick, but he was really intelligent, and he'd make a move and get the defender to bite, and then he'd get to the basket. Or he'd make a move and hit a pull-up. Make a move and just stand there. Like he would do something where it wasn't like it didn't seem to me. Now I'd go back and watch tape because I have not watched E'Twaun Moore play college basketball in years, right?
Right.
But I just remember him being like, it was almost like it was in slow motion, but it was so effective. And I think that that's the same thing with Jakari Harris. Like sometimes it just looks like, and it's not a negative, like he just looks like he's going through, like he wants to make the right decision and he knows he's good enough. He depends more on his fakes and stuff than he does just pure speed. Now Jakari Harris is quick. I just think he's got some E'Twaun Moore in him. Maybe not as good as a pure shooter, But in terms of his ability to get to the rim and finish, and again, I think he's a guy that can finish through contact. And I don't know. I think Jakari Harris is, if I had to guess a player that's going to make the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2, I think that's the guy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to admit, sorry to interrupt you there, but I'm going to admit Daniel Jacobson from that role just because we didn't see him play last year. So this to me is still his year 1.
Right. Harris knows how to create his own shot, whether it means get to the hoop or make that move, like you said, to get that separation to be able to take the shot. So he gets better. He gets better at knowing when he needs to do what, and makes that athletic jump where his numbers, maybe his percentages are better. I think you're right. I think he could be at the very least the starter at the end of the season, potentially.
I love Jakari Harris. People talked last year like he was going to be the Lance Jones replacement. I just feel like we never quite got that. I feel like he can be similar style player. I think he has a lot of upside defensively, and like you guys have been talking about with his offense, I'd love to see that. I think he's capable of that. But if he turned into more of that kind of I'm not saying he's an exact replica of Lance Jones, but like more we could fill that role as far as being at the 3, being able to provide defense and score in that situation. But I think he could potentially make that bigger impact on this roster to help take them from being a high hype team to being a team that can actually go out and win a championship by bringing some of that athleticism, because he's athletic, but also the defense and the toughness. So, I love Jakari Harris. I think he could do exactly what you guys are saying.
I mean, it's crazy just to think we talked about this. We're talking about starting lineups, but like to me, you've got those 5 guys that we mentioned. So let's say it's Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer. Let's say with CJ Cox for now, and then you've got Trey Kaufman-Renn and Daniel Jacobson. Then coming off the bench, you've got another starting 5. Yeah, Oscar Clough, Liam Murphy, Omer Meyer, Jakari Harris, and who am I leaving?
Raleigh Burgess.
You could throw Raleigh Burgess. You could throw Antoine West.
Now, did you say CJ Cox? I don't even remember if he said CJ.
He said he had CJ in the
starter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, think about that. We haven't even talked about Raleigh Burgess at all during this time, and yet he's one that Matt Painter's really high on.
Yeah, I think he's going to redshirt this year. That's me talking. That's not me knowing anything. That's just a gut feeling, because I don't know. I don't think the minutes are going to be there, because the 3 guys I mentioned are going to rotate between that 4 and 5. Do you want to burn a season, because you've already lost 1 season and you dealt with injury? Do you want to burn a season where you're going to play like 6 minutes a game? Now, again, if he balls out and takes huge strides in this next season, but to me, I wouldn't be shocked if he's like, yeah, I'm gonna redshirt this year.
Well, yeah, because he's gonna have an extra year coming into a season that, Clough's gonna be gone.
Yep, exactly.
PKR is gonna be gone. Like he's gonna be expected to need him harder from that point on. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like unless he can jump in front of some of those other front court players, like somebody in the rotation, there's just the minutes are not going to be there. They have between Clough and Jacobson. Burgess is basically he's similar in style to those players. I think is kind of a guy that can play the 5, but we never saw the offense from him. I just feel like there aren't many situations where you would play him where you couldn't just play Jacobson or Clough or any of those other guys. So I agree. I think redshirting would probably be smart for him.
And that's not at all saying that we don't like him or
right. I think he's a good player.
It honestly would maybe be in his best interest to be able to get 1 year of practicing. Yes, it stinks that you don't get to play in a game, but you get practicing, you get to, travel with the team, you build muscle, put on some muscle, and you're that much better coming in the next season.
Well, and not only that, but I think it was smart to not redshirt his freshman season, because if I say this as someone who's not in shape, but I think if he was in better shape, he could have contributed a lot more to that team. Now, obviously, the injury towards the end of the season was a factor as well, but he would play 2 or 3 minutes, and you would just see he would come in for the first 45 seconds to a minute and just be high energy and sprinting up and down the floor. And then by about that 2-minute mark, he was tugging on the jersey, leaning on guys. He was just out of shape. Probably isn't the right way to say it, because obviously
he wasn't in playing shape. D1 playing shape.
He was not in the condition you need to be to play Division I basketball at a high level. And Matt Painter talked about that. Like, he would say after games, like, yep, that E doesn't stand for elephant on his tank. Like, he needs to get in better shape, basically. So if you had a year to go through the conditioning process, to go through practice where you're playing against Daniel Jacobson, Oscar Clough, Trey Kaufman-Renn every single day, it sucks to not play, but you would have 3 years then where you're probably going to be – you have potential to be a starter at the 4 for 3 straight years and be a member of a pretty good team.
And be a significant role as a defensive, a practice defensive guy against those big guys.
Right.
And, work on his offense during those practices. He gets that much better. Plus, he's significant in how far Purdue goes. He plays a part in that role.
Absolutely. The other guy I was thinking of, so Antoine West, who Matt Painter compared to Carson Edwards, and then Jack Benner, who redshirted last year. Yeah. There's again, he's another kid that people have talked about with a high ceiling, but we don't really know because, we've seen our practice clips, and what I've heard is he's sneaky athletic. Now, I don't know anything else about, but it's like one of those things where if you go into the gym, you'd be like, oh, okay.
Oh, really?
We didn't know that was in your bag, Jack, but kudos to you. So I'll be interested to see if he's able to carve out any playing time.
Yeah, because we just talked for 35 minutes and didn't mention his name until minute 36. Yep. And again, he's an athletic guard that they've got on the roster. We mentioned Omer Meyer. Is there any chance he redshirts or is he playing?
I think he's going to play because I think – now, again, I don't know this, but I would think if you're coming over from EuroLeague, you're probably going to want to play. Now, he said he wants to earn it, and I think also he can do a little bit, and we talked about Jakari Harris, CJ Cox. I think he can do a little bit about what we talked about, or I think Purdue can do a little bit of what we talked about between Clough, Jacobson, and Renn with the 1 and 2, where we're going to have Omer come in for those 5-6 minutes that we don't have Braden on the floor, or we're going to move him over to the 2 when we need Fletcher to get some rest, and Braden and Omar are going to play on the same time. So I think that's going to be an aspect. I think that there's enough minutes for him to where it's going to be worth it, and he can be effective in those, again, depending on situations, 14 minutes per game.
And I'm not trying to insinuate anything, so please don't. I haven't heard that. I just thought, with him coming in brand new, he's got the capability of redshirt, and does he do that to earn it? I wouldn't think so, but
I would, because the only way you kind of avoid that is if you basically play Braden 40 minutes again, and then you have CJ or Jakari run the point. And I think you could probably have Jakari run the point, but if Omar's a better passer and you feel comfortable with his game, I think you just have him do that. I think as much as Matt Painter is going to be reluctant to take Braden Smith out, if you're able to just give him a blow for 4 to 5 minutes per game, it's going to, in terms of his effectiveness and efficiency, again, not just in one game, but over the course of the season, he was playing 40 minutes in consecutive games, and he never wore down. So imagine if he gets some rest every once in a while, what he's going to be able to do in some of these games, right? So I do think that I
he
think
wore down.
I think Matt Painter's like, man, we love that we were able to play you 38 and a half minutes a game, but maybe we can play you 36 and you'll be just fine.
But do we have to?
Yeah,
we
exactly.
will, but do we have to? If we don't, great.
Well, you watch those Omer Meyer clips. I mean, he can do stuff that nobody else on this roster, except probably Braden Smith, can do. Like some of the way he passes and shoots and has all that packaged together. He's outside of Braden Smith, there aren't other guys that can do that. I kind of feel like it's more likely Antoine West would redshirt instead of Omer Meyer because you have Cox and Harris and there's other guys to take up those spots. But I am really looking forward to seeing what Meyer can do for this team because I think his clips look really, really good. Yeah,
and I think, look, I think that all those kids are talented. They could probably come in and start in a lot of seasons at Purdue, or maybe not start, but have a significant role. But like if you're Raleigh Burgess or Antoine West, to me, redshirt is the easy decision here because I know they're going to have a bigger class in 2026, but you're losing Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Trey Kaufman-Renn. You're going to lose Clough. You're going to lose Liam Murphy. So right there's 5 spots. Right. So you're going to have a pretty good opportunity to get a lot of really good practice against some of the best players in program history. practice on a national championship caliber squad, and that should make you that much better and prepared than for the next year to compete, not maybe for a starting spot, or maybe just for significant minutes off the bench. Like either way.
And that's how you reload, not rebuild.
Yeah.
Is you have the guys that are smart at what they're doing, and understand that it's not a knock against them for getting a red shirt. Look, we can utilize you even more. We'll look what you're getting being on red shirt and what opportunities you're going to have afterwards.
I think a huge part of that a huge benefit is a guy like Trey Kaufman-Renn, who redshirted his freshman year, and Mason Gillis, who redshirted. And you can have those guys that are like, look, yeah, maybe it sucks sometimes, but look at our careers. Look at the teams we got to play for. So that just kind of gets the ball rolling. So if you have if nobody on Purdue's roster redshirted, Antoine West and Raleigh Burgess be like, to hell with that. I'm not redshirting. I'm playing. Or I'm going to the transfer portal. But when you have those guys that are like, or Jack Benter, yeah, I redshirted. It wasn't a lot of fun, but this is how much better. I still got to practice with these guys. I still got to be on the team, still got to take part in this. And look at how much my game improved. When you have kind of set that standard and you get that ball rolling, I think that's kind of the trickle-down effect. And I think that's where the culture is with Purdue basketball, where maybe it's easier to convince those guys because you say, hey, yeah, Trey Kaufman-Renn sat out a year. Now he's going to be a first-team All-American and probably play in the NBA or in Europe or something, to me, it makes those decisions a lot easier.
The one thing that it will be, and then we'll wrap up. Like I said, we always end up getting enough time with. I don't remember, honestly. Anyways, see, I tried to make a little joke and then I lost my point. But I think with what we've got coming back, it's just some. These guys will be smart enough. They committed to Purdue for a reason, and it's one thing that they knew what they were coming into. They knew what was on this roster. Was it going to be loaded? Did they know when they committed that it would be this loaded? Maybe not, but at the same point, they committed for a reason. And Matt Painter's one great salesman when it comes to this is what we need you to be when you come in. Is there going to be opportunity? Yes. But you know what? At the same time, you're going to have to earn it. And they know this already. They already know it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he talks about all the time. Like, I tell him the truth. And so there are no surprises when you get here. And his message to everybody is basically, I don't remember where I heard this, but it basically was like, I'm going to give you all the tools you need to be successful to be a significant contributor to this team, to be a starter on this team. I'm also going to give it to the other guys. Like, I'm going to give them the exact same things, and then it's up to you. So I think that's why I also think, like, I do believe there are some programs that are out there like, yeah, you'll easily come in here and play 25 minutes. And then all of a sudden they're playing 5 minutes a game. It's like, well, what the hell, man? Like, you told me I was going to play 20, 25 minutes, where Matt Painter's like, look, if you're good enough to play 5 minutes, you'll play 5 minutes. And that's about it. So I think that there's an understanding that's it, again, and that's why you get some of that buy-in from those players, even if it's a lesser role or a redshirt season or whatever the case might be. I think that's why they're still willing to attend and stay committed to Purdue, even when things may not go their way.
Well, Dustin Schutte, 3 old issues, forgetful things, but we always have a good time having you here. I'll admit I had 2 of them, but
I got the train rolling though.
Yeah, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Dustin Schutte from Sports Illustrated. I appreciate you coming on, talking to us, kind of having a different perspective of the same stuff that we've been talking about. It's nice to have as we enter the dog days of summer, and that's not good since we don't start playing until practicing until mid-fall. So
yeah, we
still have a season and a half. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it greatly.
Not a problem.
Grant, Friday we have no show since I'm going to be on vacation, but next week we start our Beyond the Rails segments, starting with Walter Jordan next week.
I feel like we've been talking about it for a long time, and it's about finally here. But that Walter Jordan one was such a fun one to record. Yeah. So hopefully hopefully everybody else can see that too.
Yep. And then the following week, we've got 2 episodes from Chris Kramer on Beyond the Rails as well. That was a great opportunity to talk to him as well. But thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday edition of Boilermaker Lounge. For Grant Flora, I'm Sam Sprunger. We'll see you later.